Welcome to the first episode of Chester's Closet Classics. I'm Chester McCreepy. And ventriloquist dummies aren't the only obsolete piece of entertainment that got shoved in the closet to be forgotten about. I'm in here with a whole slew of VHS tapes. And I figured it'd be selfish for me to hog all these big fat slabs of cinema goodness to myself. So here we are. The first flick I'm gonna share with you guys is called Nightflyers. It's a 1987 sci-fi film developed from a story by George R.R. Martin. Now, it's my understanding that most of you guys are gonna know him from a little show called Game of Thrones. That's not on tape, so I haven't seen it. I hear it's pretty good, though. Originally, it was a short story and then a novella. But when it was developed into a film, George R.R. Martin didn't really have any say in the project, and some key changes were made. But we'll get back to that in a minute. The flick has a directorial credit for a guy named D.C. Blake, but if that doesn't sound familiar, don't feel bad. It's a bullshit name. The shoot was helmed by a fella named Robert Collector, though honestly, you probably wouldn't recognize that name either. He never really did much. But he bailed on Nightflyers before post-production was finished and had his name removed. So as you can probably guess, we're not really dealing with somebody's pride and joy here. The property has recently been acquired by the Sci-Fi Channel, and an all-new, ongoing series is being planned. Martin doesn't really have a hand in the show's development, but he did recently speak out endorsing it. Remember how we mentioned those changes? In the original story, the main character is named Melantha Gerald, and George R.R. Martin very clearly describes her as black. He specifies she has an exceptionally dark complexion. And throughout the years of the book getting cheesy fantasy painting covers, they would never properly represent the character. And when it made its way to the silver screen, it was just more of the same. Melantha Gerald became Miranda Dorlac and was cast with Catherine Mary Stewart. Now, there's no reason to hold this against the actress or anything. Stewart's great, and we're probably going to see her in more episodes. She was all over 80s genre flicks. You may know her from more popular titles like Last Starfire or Weekend at Bernie's. They did stay true to some other character details, such as the weird gymnastics exercising. Fast forward back to present day, and the new sci-fi series casting Jodie Turner-Smith to play Melantha Gerald. And George R.R. Martin said on his blog, it may have taken 30 years, but at last he can say, now that's Melantha Gerald. But back to the original movie. There are some other notable cast members that include Michael De Beers, who's actually a Marquis de Beers, an English nobleman lord kind of thing. He was in a lot of movies and TV and sort of a rock star guy back in the day. We also have James Avery, best known to you guys probably as Uncle Phil, and the voice of Master Shredder in the old Ninja Turtles cartoon. Now before we get started on the recap, I got this little gimmick I worked out I like to call Chester's Checklist. We've got Retrofuturism, Old School Movie Magic Miniatures, Pompadours, Emo Holograms, Sassy Telepathy, Cyber Stalking, Disfigurement, Gymnastics Foo, Laser Foo, a Space Witch, and Brain Lightning. Alright, here we go! Right into the thick of the backstory as soon as the titles are over, with Miranda giving a voiceover recap of the crew and how they're on a mission to find the mysterious Vulcan, an ancient race of space gods kind of thing. We have all kinds of classic sci-fi stuff like telepaths and some alien linguistics experts. You know, everything you need for a deep space anthropological mission. We also get some fun miniatures here as we're introduced to the titular Knight Rider spaceship in the port hangar. Of course, what would any self-respecting space movie in the 80s be without iris doors? Fun fact, these are modeled after the shutters they use on set lighting, and sometimes that's actually all they are, and they make them look bigger with the use of forced perspective. As the Marquis de Beers makes his debut as the telepath, we get this wonderfully corny telepathy scene as he meets the rest of the crew.
Great. The man who brought us the crash of the Pleiades.
You can read my mind anytime you like.
Wonder who does his clothes.
What an asshole.
Shortly after that, we meet the ship's mysterious captain, Royd, in the form of a hologram. What's fun here is that the hologram and the spaceship in the future still have analog static. Also, it seems as though he likes to creeper stalk the crew by watching them through his little projectors. There's some tension among the crew as they did not realize the ship was run by one single dude who's not real. After some more random dialogue about getting the mission going, we get to this exercise scene, which you would think would just be some jogging or pull-ups on a bulkhead or some other usual spaceship workout, but no, she brings along uneven bars. Because you just never know when you want to do a little gymnastics, I guess. The rest of the crew is doing their science when we get this sort of scene of the telepath having some issues. Earlier he gets awakened and asleep from a nightmare, and while they're actually scanning for alien life, he complains about interference and winds up having a bit of an episode.
Clear it! I just can't clear it!
And then, not long after that, while Miranda and Royd are having these sort of awkward flirtations, we get the very clear indication that there's some connection with the telepath's issues. Royd and Miranda are getting pretty close on the quick, and some exposition lays out the whole backstory. The ship was built some time ago by Royd's mother, who he then clarifies he is actually just a male clone of. She cloned herself in a man's body and treated him as a son. He was born and raised on this ship in space, and as such, his body is not strong enough to survive the stresses of going to a planet. And if he goes around people, he will get sick and die. So to recap, old lady clone in a young man's body, he's a bubble boy in space. But between seeing that it's now the ship scanner eye stalking Miranda and Royd, and the psychic having another episode, we know there's more to the ship, and it is not good. All this tension builds up in some more boring exposition, dragging through the middle of the movie with some voiceovers and then the telepathic conversation getting heated. It all leads up to this nice little explosion in the common area.
The ship is alive! It's a seething, malignant presence and it hates all of you!
No, not that explosion. Oh, damn, I hope Uncle Phil's okay. Well, fortunately they have this super fancy doctor machine, and it's very precise. Okay, so maybe he won't be playing that piano anytime soon. But the crew is obviously a little worked up at this point, and they're not at all happy with the spaceship situation. Miranda Dorlac is trying to assure them all that Royd is on their side, but they're not having it.
Maybe Royd's the problem. Maybe he's the reason we can't turn back.
The computer's the problem. It runs the entire ship.
Meanwhile, the psychic is gonna shoot some kind of space dope that boosts his power, and he has a full-on mental face-to-face with the ship's malicious artificial intelligence, who is apparently some kind of Victorian electro witch, and she's transferred her consciousness to the ship's primary computer. That's some good space dope. So now they all know that the ship is really this crazy old bitch and she's gonna kill them all. So they send the technician down into the ship's guts to try and find the primary computer. We learn a little bit more about the mother from the psychic during this time. She was a psychic back in the day before psychics were really accepted, so they tried to cut her power out of her head. It didn't work. She went crazy. But her psychic powers did allow her to transfer her consciousness to the ship's computer. Who knew? She knows they're onto her, so now she's gonna start picking off the crew one by one, using the ship and by just flat out taking over the psychic. The surgery machine comes back into play with a decidedly horror twist. As our protagonist is about to have her brain lasered open, she fights her way free, and the computer witch starts shooting the room up. Royd finally gets his act together and realizes he has brain lightning too, and he begins fighting back against his mom, Crystal, and takes over the Dr. Bot. That's when things get bad for the psychic. which that he would just be free. He's not really evil, he's just been taken over by the evil psychic computer mom. But who cares? Getting his face sliced open was pretty awesome. The rest of the crew is not faring so well either. So we are in full-on survival mode, and Royd is up and about looking fabulous. He's had about all he can take from his overbearing techno mom.
Adara, you were my mother. You gave me life, but you've become an abomination. Go to hell!
And proceeds to give her a few good whacks with his fancy walking stick. The ship was damaged in all the melee, and the crew has to go outside and patch the exterior hull, or they're all gonna decompress and die in a couple of hours. These guys just can't catch a break. We get back to some fun exterior shots, and this is what makes these old sci-fi movies the best. The practical effects models. The crew is out in their little repair pods, and Royd has his own fancy sports coupe or something, and he comes out for a heartfelt face-to-face with his lady.
Miranda, I never imagined she would hurt you or anyone else. All my life, she has lied to me.
I know.
Unfortunately, the ship comes back to life while they're all outside, and they're gonna be really screwed if she locks them all out. The technician makes his way inside, and Uncle Phil is right behind him.
Killer, would you wait a minute? You don't have to be a goddamn hero.
I'm here, man. I'm cool. I'm flying. Whatever it is, it's got a big surprise coming.
I hear you, but wait for help.
But back outside in space, the old professor dude has been tricked into thinking that he sees the Vulcan.
It's the Vulcan.
I know, you forgot all about the Vulcan, didn't you? We all did. And I've never read the novella, but it's my understanding that in the book it goes into a lot more detail about the ancient space gods, where the movie just sort of uses them as a background detail and pretty much forgets about them through most of the movie. Back inside, Keeler is trying to get to the ship's primary computer core and gets blasted by a big explosion. The ship ain't going down easy. Not exactly sure how it's making stuff float through zero gravity without any equipment attached to it. You're not left much time to wonder before the psychic comes back, sans head, and we are back into the thick of full-on space horror.
Hello, darling. All good things must come to an end.
But headless knife-wielding space zombies are no match for brain lightning.
Royd?
You bitch! You think you're gonna leave here alive? You think he can protect you?
There's some fireworks, some fog machines, the shit is really hitting the fan. But where they really catch it out of left field is the old hag wakes up out of her space pod. And we learn that her electro face is not some sort of nightmare projection. That's just really what she looks like. I guess you'd be a little crabby too if you looked like this. Miranda goes all vampire slayer on the old bat, and they hop into Royd's Space Miata and hit the road. Just in time to watch the ship get blown all to hell. see some miniatures by the Ed Wood Art Department. How romantic. The flick wraps up with a voiceover much like it started. They sort of mention the Vulcan again as if any of us watching the movie would still care about the Vulcan. They weren't really a part of the story that we watched.
Maybe the Vulcan had only been a myth after all.
And apparently they don't really exist. So I guess everybody literally died for nothing other than saving Royd, who will go die on the first planet he steps foot on. I don't know. I guess I should have picked a better movie for my first episode. The kind of a name is Royd anyway? That's just gross. The TV show will probably have more time to go deeper into the story and stuff. They'll probably get a little bit more into the book's details. Like I said, I don't know much about George R.R. Martin. Does everybody always die in all of his stuff? Alright, thanks for watching, guys. I had a lot of fun going over the movie with you. I don't know what I'll show you next time, but can't be any worse than this. Keep an eye out for it. See you around. If you enjoyed watching this, give me money.